October 8th, 1918, the Argonne Forest, France. A 31-year-old farmer from Tennessee is pinned down by German machine guns. Most of his squad is dead or wounded. He's outnumbered at least 50-1. What does he do? He remembers turkey hunting. In the next hour, this man will single-handedly kill at least 25 German soldiers and capture 132 more, using nothing but a rifle, a pistol, and hunting tactics he learned as a poor mountain boy in Tennessee. His name was Alvin York, and this is the story of how a conscientious objector who almost refused to fight became the most decorated American soldier of World War I. How a dirt-poor farmer who'd never traveled more than 50 miles from home became a legend, and how a simple Colt M1911 pistol and a turkey hunting trick changed the course of a battle. This is one of the most incredible combat stories you've never heard, and every word of it is documented and true. Let's dive in. Before we get to that day in the Argonne Forest, you need to understand who Alvin York was. Because his background, it's what made everything possible. Alvin Cullum York was born December 13, 1887 in a two-room log cabin in Pall Mall, Tennessee. And when I say poor, I mean dirt poor. His family lived in the mountains, valley of the Three Forks of the Wolf River, isolated, rugged. The kind of place where you hunted for food, not sport. If you didn't shoot straight, your family went hungry. Alvin was the third of 11 children. His father was a blacksmith and subsistence farmer. They grew what they could, hunted the rest. Alvin's formal education? 9 months. Total. That's it. By age 9, he was working full-time to help support the family. But what Alvin lacked in book learning, he made up for with a rifle. The boy could shoot. His weapon of choice was a muzzle-loading flintlock rifle. Yeah, you heard that right. In 1900, this kid was using a gun design from the 1700s. That's how poor they were. But with that ancient rifle, Alvin could hit a running turkey at 40 yards. Every time. He could shoot a running fox. He could nail squirrels out of trees. Turkey hunting was particularly important. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the way you hunt wild turkeys in the Tennessee mountains, that technique would save his life in France. When you're turkey hunting, you call them in. Multiple birds come at once. And here's the trick. You shoot the ones in the back first. Why? Because if you shoot the front one, the others scatter. They see it go down and run. But if you shoot back to front, the ones in front don't see their buddies falling and they keep coming toward you. Remember that turkey hunting trick, because in 1918, Alvin York would use that exact same technique on charging German soldiers. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. By his early 20s, Alvin York was, well, let's be honest, kind of a hellraiser. He drank, he gambled, he got into fights. Every Saturday night, you could find Alvin drunk at the local saloon, playing poker and raising hell. His mother worried about him, prayed for him. His father died when Alvin was 24, and that responsibility should have straightened him out. But it didn't, not immediately. Then, in 1914, something changed. A church revival came through Pall Mall. Alvin attended, probably at his mother's insistence, and something clicked. He converted, became a devout Christian, joined the Church of Christ in Christian Union. And this wasn't just Sunday Christianity. This was serious. This church believed in pacifism. They believed the Bible's commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," was absolute, no exceptions. So when America, entered World War I in April 1917, and when the draft came calling, Alvin York had a problem. His country needed him, but his faith told him killing was wrong. He filed for conscientious objector status, wrote on his draft card, "Don't want to fight." It was denied. His church wasn't on the official list of recognized pacifist denominations. Some bureaucratic oversight. Didn't matter that his beliefs were genuine. The army wanted bodies. Alvin York would become a soldier, whether he wanted to or not. He was drafted into the 82nd Infantry Division in November 1917. He later said those first weeks were the hardest of his life, training to kill, when everything in his soul said it was wrong. But then, two officers changed his mind. Captain Edward Danforth and Major George Buxton sat down with Alvin, had long conversations about faith and duty, about defending the innocent, about the difference between murder and righteous defense. They gave him a 10-day pass to go home and think about it, pray about it, figure it out. Alvin went up to a mountain, literally, spent time alone, praying, reading his Bible. He came down with his answer. He would fight. Not because he wanted to, not because he stopped believing killing was wrong, but because he believed that sometimes you had to do wrong to stop a greater wrong. He would fight to end the war, to protect the innocent, to stop German aggression. And once Alvin York made up his mind, he was. Once Alvin committed to being a soldier, he became one hell of a soldier. His superiors immediately noticed his shooting skills. Remember, this is a man who'd been shooting since he could walk, who'd hunted his entire life, who could hit targets most soldiers couldn't even see. The standard U.S. Army rifle in 1918 was the M1903 Springfield. Bolt action, 5-round magazine, .30-06 caliber, accurate, up to 600 yards in skilled hands. Alvin York's hands? Extremely skilled. At the rifle range, he was scoring expert marksman ratings, hitting targets at distances that amazed his instructors. One officer watched him shoot and said, "York, where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Alvin just smiled and said, "Turkey hunting, sir." He also qualified with the M1911 pistol, the Colt 45 automatic, standard sidearm for U.S. officers and NCOs. The M1911 is a beast of a handgun. Designed by John Browning, adopted by the Army in 1911, hence the name. It fires a 45 ACP round, a big, slow, heavy bullet, designed to stop whatever it hits. The Army wanted it after experiences in the Philippines. They'd been using .38 revolvers, and drugged-up insurgents would keep charging even after being shot multiple times. The 45, one hit, you go down. Period. Alvin described the M1911's recoil as like getting kicked by a mule. But he loved it, said the stopping power was incredible. Hit a man anywhere with that 45, he's done. So by mid-1918, Alvin York had become an expert with both weapons, the M1903 rifle for long-range precision, the M1911 pistol for close-quarters devastation. In May 1918, his unit shipped out to France. The 82nd Division was fresh, green. Most of the men had never seen combat. They were about to get a brutal education. By October 1918, the Allies were pushing hard. The Meuse-Argonne offensive, the final big push to end the war. Over 1 million American soldiers involved, the largest American operation of the war. And on October 8th, Alvin York's unit would walk into hell. The Argonne Forest in October 1918 was a nightmare. Dense woods, steep ravines, German machine gun nests everywhere, barbed wire, artillery craters, mud. The German defensive line here was called the Kriemhilde Stellung, named after a character from German mythology, and it was tough, really tough. The Germans had been fortifying this position for years. Alvin York was now a corporal, had been promoted for his marksmanship and reliability. He was part of Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division, October 8, 1918. The mission was simple on paper. Advance through the forest, take the railroad near the village of Châtel-Chéry. Reality? Nothing was ever simple in the Argonne. Early morning, Company G moved out. They were immediately hit by artillery, German shells screaming in, trees exploding, shrapnel everywhere. Then the machine guns opened up. The German MG-08 machine gun could fire 450 rounds per minute. And the Germans had them positioned with overlapping fields of fire, meaning wherever you moved, you were in someone's sights. Company G was pinned down. Men were dying. Entire squads cut down trying to advance. The company commander ordered a platoon to flank around and take out the machine gun nests from behind. 17 men, led by Sergeant Bernard Early. Alvin York was one of those 17. They moved through the forest, carefully, using the terrain, trying to stay out of sight. And then they stumbled onto something, a German headquarters position in a small valley. About 40 German soldiers, officers, medics, runners, and worse. From this position, they could see multiple machine gun nests on the ridge above. Sergeant Early made a call. Take the headquarters by surprise. The Americans rushed in, caught the Germans completely off guard. Within seconds, they had captured about 20 Germans without firing a shot. But then, the Germans on the ridge heard the commotion. Those machine guns, the ones that had been firing at Company G, they turned around and opened fire on the Americans. Longer pause, slower. Within seconds, half of the American patrol was down, killed or wounded, including Sergeant Early, shot in the gut. 9 men left standing out of 17. Pause, even slower. And then there were 6. And in that moment, Alvin York realized something. He was the highest-ranking soldier, still able to fight. This was his command now. Alvin York found himself behind a small rise, barely any cover. Dead and wounded Americans around him. German machine guns about 30 yards away on higher ground. Most soldiers would have surrendered or died trying to retreat. Alvin York went turkey hunting. He had his M1903 rifle, full magazine, extra ammunition, and decades of hunting experience. He found a prone position behind a small log, steadied his rifle, and started shooting. One German machine gunner, shot, down. Another gunner, shot, down. Alvin wasn't spraying bullets. He was making every single shot count, picking targets, breathing, squeezing the trigger, just like shooting squirrels back home. The Germans couldn't figure out where the shots were coming from. Alvin was partially concealed. His muzzle flash was hard to see in the forest shade, and he was shooting from a prone position, presenting the smallest possible target. Every time a German machine gunner would pop up to fire, York would drop him. He later described it as mechanical. I didn't think about them being men. I thought about them being targets, just like turkeys. But then the Germans did something smart. A German officer organized a counterattack. 6 soldiers fixed bayonets and charged directly at York's position. They came in a line, spread out, running, screaming. Alvin's rifle was empty. He'd just fired his last round. No time to reload. He dropped the rifle, drew his M1911 pistol. And here's where that turkey hunting technique came in. Most soldiers would shoot the closest threat first, the guy in front, but one bearing down on you. That's instinct. That's what you think you should do. Alvin York shot the one in the back first, then the next one back, then the next, working his way forward. Why? Same reason you do it with turkeys. The guys in front didn't see their comrades behind them dropping. They kept charging, kept coming at York, completely unaware that half their attack force was already dead. By the time the front German realized something was wrong, he was the only one left, and York shot him too. 6 men, 8 shots, all down. York said later, "I had practiced that on turkeys my whole life. You always take the back bird first. I never thought I'd use it on men, but it worked the same way." The Germans on the ridge were now terrified. They'd watched 6 men charge and just disappear, dropped by some invisible sharpshooter they couldn't locate. More Germans died as York continued picking off machine gunners, and then something incredible happened. A German officer stood up, First Lieutenant Paul Vollmer. He was commanding the German forces in that sector, and he'd been watching his men get picked off one by one for the last 20 minutes. He shouted in English. English? Alvin York, still behind his log, shouted back, "No, American. Don't shoot. I want to surrender." Now, Alvin was in a bind. He was still outnumbered, significantly. There were at least 100 Germans still on that ridge and in the valley. If this was a trick, if they were trying to get him to expose himself, he was dead. But if it was real, this was an opportunity. Alvin kept his pistol trained on the German officer and said, "Well, come on down then, and bring your men." Vollmer spoke in German to his soldiers. Some hesitated. Some of the machine gunners on the ridge started to swing their guns toward Alvin's position. Alvin shot 2 more Germans. To make his point clear, Vollmer shouted again in German, more urgently this time. And slowly, incredibly, the Germans started coming down from the ridge. Hands up, surrendering. First 10, then 20, then 50. Alvin kept his pistol on Vollmer, put the German officer at the front of the column, told him, "You're going to march these men back to the American lines. And if anyone tries anything, you're the first one I shoot." Smart move, human shield. And it ensured Vollmer had every reason to keep his men in line. They started marching back. And here's where it gets even crazier. On the way back through the German lines, they encountered more Germans, other machine gun nests, other units. Alvin would order Vollmer to call out to them in German, tell them to surrender, that the Americans had overrun their position. And it worked, over and over again. More Germans kept joining the column of prisoners. By the time Alvin York reached American lines, he had 132 German prisoners. One American corporal, with a rifle and a pistol, had captured 132 enemy soldiers. When he reported to his battalion commander, the officer literally couldn't believe it, thought York was joking or exaggerating. They counted and counted again. 132 prisoners, 3 officers, 129 enlisted men. The battalion commander looked at York and said, "How many did you capture?" York replied, "I ain't sure. I didn't have time to count them as I got them, but there's a tolerable lot of them here." Tolerable lot is one way to put it. After the battle, investigators tried to piece together exactly what happened and what Alvin York had accomplished. Body count from York's position. Estimates range from 25 to 35 German soldiers killed by York personally. The exact number will never be known. but everyone agrees it was at least 25, most from rifle fire. The 6 from the counterattack killed with the M1911 pistol, and several more with the pistol during the surrender process. 132 captured. 35 machine guns silenced. York's action had broken the German defensive line. His company and the entire regiment were able to advance. They took their objective. One man, with 2 weapons, changed the course of a battle. Let's talk about those weapons for a moment. The M1903 Springfield was perfect for York's skills. Bolt action meant it was slow, but accurate. And York didn't need rapid fire. He needed precision. Every shot counted. The rifle had excellent iron sights. The .30-06 cartridge had stopping power and range. In York's hands, it was a surgeon's tool. But it was the M1911 pistol that really saved him. When those Germans charged and his rifle was empty, if he'd been fumbling to reload, he'd have been bayoneted, dead. The M1911 was in his holster, one smooth draw, and that .45 caliber punch? As York described it, they dropped like they'd been hit by a sledgehammer. The M1911 holds 7 rounds in the magazine, plus 1 in the chamber. 8 shots total. York fired 8 times at those 6 charging Germans. 2 shots missed or hit non-fatally. 6 men down. The stopping power of the .45 ACP is legendary. The bullet is big, slow, and heavy. It doesn't need to be fast. When it hits, it transfers all its energy into the target. Massive tissue damage, instant incapacitation. York said later, "That Army .45, it's got some kick to it. But Lord, does it work. You don't need a second shot." The combination of York's hunting skills, his 2 weapons, and that turkey hunting technique, it was perfect. Almost like it was meant to be. Alvin York became an instant celebrity. General John Pershing, commander of American forces in Europe, personally presented York with the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. The citation read in part, formal quote voice, "After his platoon had suffered heavy casualties and 3 other non-commissioned officers had become casualties, Corporal York assumed command. Fearlessly leading 7 men, he charged with great daring a machine gun nest which was pouring deadly and incessant fire upon his platoon. He also received the French Croix de Guerre, the Italian Croce di Guerra, and dozens of other medals from Allied nations. The press called him the greatest civilian soldier. Newspapers ran stories with headlines like Tennessee sharpshooter bags 132 Germans. When he returned to America in 1919, he got a ticker tape parade in New York City, met President Woodrow Wilson, was offered movie deals, endorsement deals, money for his story, and Alvin York turned almost all of it down. He didn't want fame. He didn't want to profit from killing. He just wanted to go home to Tennessee. He said, "I didn't do it for medals or glory. I did it because it had to be done, and I'm glad it's over." He did eventually accept some money, but only for a specific purpose. He used it to build a school in Pall Mall, Tennessee, the Alvin C. York Institute, because he'd only had 9 months of education, and he wanted the kids in his community to have better. He married his sweetheart, Gracie Williams, had 8 children, became a farmer again, lived a quiet life. But the world wouldn't let him stay completely quiet. In 1941, Hollywood made a movie about him, Sergeant York, starring Gary Cooper. It was one of the highest-grossing films of the year. Gary Cooper won an Oscar for the role. Alvin didn't want the movie made, but World War II was starting, and the government convinced him that his story could inspire a new generation of soldiers. He agreed, on the condition that Gary Cooper play him, and that some of the profits go to his school. During World War II, Alvin helped with war bond drives, recruited for the military, met with soldiers. He was too old to fight, but he did what he could. He died on September 2nd, 1964, at age 76. He was buried with full military honors in the Wolf River Cemetery in Pall Mall, Tennessee, right back where he started. The two weapons Alvin York used that day in 1918 both went on to legendary status. The M1903 Springfield served as the standard U.S. military rifle through World War I. In World War II, it was gradually replaced by the M1 Garand, but it remained in service as a sniper rifle. Its accuracy was unmatched. The Marines used M1903s in the Pacific. Snipers in Vietnam still used them. Today, the rifle is beloved by collectors and is still used in military drill ceremonies. It's accurate, reliable, and elegant. A beautiful piece of engineering. But the M1911? That pistol became an icon. Adopted in 1911, it served as the standard U.S. military sidearm for 74 years. Through World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, it wasn't officially replaced until 1985, when the military switched to the Beretta M9. But even after being officially replaced, many units kept using the 1911. Special Forces, Marines, anyone who had a choice often chose the .45. Why? Stopping power, reliability, and over 100 years of proven combat effectiveness. The M1911 has been used in more conflicts than almost any other firearm. It's been copied by dozens of manufacturers. Millions have been produced. And today, over 100 years after its adoption, it's still one of the most popular pistols in the world. Law enforcement uses them. Competitive shooters use them. Civilians carry them for self-defense. And every single person who owns an M1911, whether they know it or not, is carrying a piece of Alvin York's story. Because on that day in October 1918, that pistol did exactly what it was designed to do. It stopped a close-quarters attack. It saved a soldier's life. And it helped win a battle. John Browning would have been proud. So what can we learn from Alvin York's story? First, skills transfer. York's turkey hunting technique, learned as a poor mountain kid, worked in modern warfare. The principles were the same. Patience, precision, understanding your target's behavior. Combat isn't just about the biggest weapons or the most firepower. It's about using what you have effectively. Second, marksmanship matters. In an age of machine guns and artillery, one skilled rifleman changed everything. York didn't spray bullets. He made every shot count, quality over quantity. That's a lesson that's still relevant today. Third, the right tool for the right job. York had two weapons, each perfect for its role. The rifle for precision at distance, the pistol for close-quarters survival. He knew when to use each one. He didn't try to do everything with one tool.